Kyle was 26 years old in 2004. He had been working full-time for a cable installation company, and during his downtime, he mostly gamed online with his friends. At the time, his favorite PC game to play was Unreal Tournament, and he'd often chain-smoke cigarettes and guzzle Mountain Dew Code Red while playing. He was also obsessed with MTV's The Osbournes, and rarely missed an episode. When the opportunity came to make extra cash working overnight shifts at a remote server facility in the Pacific Northwest, it sounded like the perfect gig. All he had to do was watch the place, check security cameras once in a while, and make sure nobody broke in. The job was far from town and completely isolated, but that didn't bother Kyle. He liked being alone. After his application was accepted, Kyle drove out for a 1-hour training session during the afternoon. An older man in his late 50s gave him a full walkthrough of the building and showed him how to log into the main system upstairs. The building was simple: one large main floor, an upstairs section with a few offices and a bathroom, and no other entrances, only the front door. There were 2 server rooms, one on the lower and one on the upper floor. He was to check the main computers for each room and walk through, checking all the servers for temps or malfunctions. Then he could go about his day, basically being security for the place. A few days later, Kyle arrived for his first night shift, which took place on a Saturday night. The sun had just gone down when he pulled into the lot. He used his key to unlock the front door, turned off the alarm, and made his way to the main server room to start his work for the night. After he finished work in both server rooms, he made his way to the back office where he'd be spending most of his night. The room had a desk, a chair, a few random wires and cables scattered around, and a monitor that was linked to the camera feeds. Kyle plugged in his CD Walkman, threw on his headphones, and settled in. Everything was going fine for the first few hours. Around midnight, Kyle got up to stretch and decided to take a walk down the main hallway on the upper floor. As he walked west down the hallway, he glanced out the windows on his right, which offered a view of the parking lot and tree line to the north. That's when he saw it. There was a figure standing just beyond the tree line. It looked like a person, but something was off. It wasn't moving, and it was completely still. Kyle stopped in his tracks and stared for a few seconds, trying to make out any details. The figure didn't move. No flashlight, no signs of a vehicle nearby. Just a motionless black silhouette standing at the edge of the tree line to the deep woods. After about a minute, Kyle decided to return to the office. When he checked the cameras, nothing showed up in the feed. The north-facing camera was having issues with static interference, which made it even harder to verify what he saw. He stayed alert for the rest of his shift, but didn't see anything else. When morning came, he locked up and went home, trying to shake the unease. The next night, Kyle arrives at work at 11 p.m. to a dimly lit parking lot, except Kyle parks closer to the front entrance, which is on the east side of the building. It's a cold night, and there's a chill in the wind. He can hear the sound of the wind whistling through the trees in the distance. He puts his badge on the scan receiver, which turns the light green. Then he uses his key to unlock the second deadbolt and goes inside. It's quiet. Nothing but the light sound of servers running. The bottom floor is where Server Bay 1 is located, stretching far down to the other side of the building. And upstairs is Server Bay 2, with a small break room separating the upper server area into 2 sections. There's a security camera room downstairs in the main lobby, locked in a small room off to the right. Kyle proceeds to go through his checklist when he hears what sounds like a tree branch strike one of the back downstairs windows. The wind had picked up that night, and it looked like there might be a storm coming in, so Kyle chalked it up to being the wind. About 10 minutes go by while Kyle is working in the server room, and 4 of the servers started blinking red, giving off a specific code on the main computer, an overload error. He deals with it in a timely manner. While finishing his work, he hears it again, what sounds like a long tree branch hitting the glass window. But this time, on a different side of the building. There are glass windows on all sides of the building except the front. Kyle steps out of the server room since the tall servers were blocking his view. He does a quick glance left to right. It's just trees swaying in the wind in the distance. Nothing. No branches flying in the wind. He sees some lightning in the distance and confirms that indeed a storm is coming. He hurried his server duties so he could relax upstairs in one of the back offices. He thought to himself how he could crack one of the windows open and smoke cigarettes while listening to music. About an hour passed as Kyle was finishing up his maintenance of the upstairs server. By this time, thunder was rumbling in the skies and the wind picked up greatly, making that cliché wind howling sound when high winds blow against buildings or windows. Kyle walks to the back office, looking out the windows, the rain starting to come down, the lightning illuminating the distant trees to the north, briefly silhouetting them against the dark storm clouds.
What a night to work here.
He gets to the office and shuts and locks the door behind him, even though he is the only one there. He can't help but shake the eerie feeling he had tonight. He cracks the back window, which is a large one-piece window that pivots outward. You can't actually open it all the way, but it was enough for Kyle to spark up his cigarettes. The regular crew only checks in a few times out of the week, so it should be aired out by then. Kyle pulls up an office chair and lights up his cigarette. Instead of putting his headphones on, he just turns up the music loud enough and sets his headphones on the desk. He wanted to have better awareness of his surroundings tonight. In this office, Kyle's passcode would work on the computer to access the main camera system. At this time, the rain is coming in hard, blowing in the opposite direction of the window, so he could enjoy the breeze and mist coming in while he smoked his cigarettes to kill time. About 30 minutes into his relaxation, he hears it again, a long tree branch hitting the downstairs glass window. This was a lot closer to him on the other side. He got up quickly to run to the north window through the other office. He looks down where the sound would have originated, but there's nothing there. No tree branch. A loud crack of thunder startles Kyle and shivers run up his spine. He jogs back to his room and locks the connecting office door. He hears it again, now on the south side of the building, but much louder. Kyle quickly checks the security cameras. He sees nothing. But then, subconsciously, he goes through them again, looking at the front southeast-facing camera. He logs into the camera controls and turns the camera as far right as it will turn. Deep thunder and the occasional lightning would illuminate the area. It was during one of these lightning strikes that he saw it. Standing in the tree line to the southeast of the clearing was what looked like a tall shadow. But as Kyle zoomed in as much as he could, another lightning strike slightly revealed what looked like a grotesque human with pale, loose-hanging skin and long, straggly hair. It was too far away to make clearer. Kyle zoomed out the camera while his heart started pounding. He looked at the clock on the computer, and it read 1:30 a.m. His heart sank, knowing he had to stay until 6 a.m. Lightning struck again, and the figure was gone. Kyle muttered curse words under his breath. He remembered that the security guard was due to show up between 1 and 2 a.m. It's now 1:35 and he hadn't made his rounds yet. Kyle was wondering if he should go out and greet him and tell him what he saw, or try to reach him on the comms as he pulled in. That meant going back downstairs to the front of the building. And there was no way Kyle was going back down there. Luckily, there was a small bathroom in the office and a mini fridge with some supplies. He did have other duties to perform at 4 a.m. when the servers had the most drive, but that required him to go into each server room and check the main computers. He figured he had a few hours to get the courage to leave the room. Or if all else fails, he could stay in the back office until sunup. But during this time of year, that wouldn't be until 7:30 to 8 a.m., and his shift ends at 6 a.m. when it's still pitch black outside. Kyle heard the tree branch on the downstairs windows a few more times. He eventually hurried to the server rooms around 4 a.m. and did his duties. When 6 a.m. came around, Kyle hadn't seen anything else or heard anything else. The rain had died out, but it was quiet out. He had been watching all the cameras for the past hour now in the front security room. He remembered that the security room had access to one other camera that, for whatever reason, was attached to its own system in the security booth. An older camera. But it was at the back southwest corner. He didn't even want to go through the tape to check it, but he could see there was nothing on the camera at the time. The clock struck 6 a.m., and Kyle was feeling confident. He had his things ready and quickly moved out the door, locked it, and ran to his car, threw his things inside, started it, and sped off. The security guard never came that night, and at this point, Kyle didn't care. He wouldn't have to come back to this place for a whole week, and it was a relief driving away from it. Kyle wanted to tell his friends about it during an online gaming session, but he knew he wasn't supposed to talk about it since it was a private company. He did end up telling one of his close friends in an online chat session after all his other friends logged off. The friend just asked how much he was making and was surprised by the amount that Kyle told him.
You're probably just tripping yourself out, dude. If I would have finished IT school, I would have taken that job in a heartbeat.
Kyle shrugs it off and was just happy that he didn't have to go back to that place until Saturday. After a relaxing 5 days of working his regular job and playing online games with his friends, the dreaded day was finally upon him. It was time to head up to the server room. He couldn't imagine how he was going to get through another Saturday night alone, let alone having to come back on Sunday as well. Kyle shows up reluctantly to what is, unknowingly to him, his last shift. There's a sign on the door that security won't be showing up tonight. The weather is gloomy with storm clouds and light thunder, but no rain, just a slight breeze. At 11 p.m., Kyle pulls in as close as he can in front of the building before the grass. He quickly jogs from his car to the front door, places his key card, and unlocks the door with his key. The place is quiet. Kyle's heart is already pounding. He doesn't even want to turn on any lights because he feels that thing will see him through the windows. He moves quietly through the building, checking off his mundane tasks. He sits in the security room for a while, thoroughly checking all of the security cameras. Nothing. He walks upstairs and down his familiar hallway, but this time on the left side of the building that looks out into the south grass clearing leading to the forest. And like clockwork, there it was. In the far distance, barely illuminated by the building light, a tall shadow standing out there. Kyle slowly runs to one of the far southwest rooms facing in that direction. He hides behind the blinds in the room and peeks out to where the shadow figure was standing. It's slowly walking toward the building. Kyle is immediately sweating and frustrated. He's only been there a few hours and already has to deal with this thing again. He thinks to himself that he should have just stayed home and quit while he had the chance. It stops about 200 meters out in the clearing. There's enough light for Kyle to see it, but he can't see it clearly. The camera on that side of the building is only accessible from the security room. If he runs down there, he could probably zoom in on it to get a better look. But Kyle feels more comfortable being on the second floor. Thunder rumbles in the sky above, but there's no rain tonight. The entity walks east at the edge of visible light back to the forest tree line. Kyle makes a break for the back office, which has access to all the other cameras. Kyle gets to the room and locks the door, quickly moving to the computer. He turns the monitor on and puts it on its lowest brightness setting. The entity is walking past his car up to the front of the building into the dim lights out front. He can clearly make it out this time. It looks like a large mutilated human corpse with hanging skin and long, thin strands of black hair coming from its head. It has a grotesque, lopsided face with deep sunken holes for eyes. Yet when it moves, it walks fast, with a purpose. It has a large tree branch in its hand that it's striking the window with. It looks at the camera, right at Kyle, and he damn near shits himself. When he looks back to the camera, it's gone. It doesn't even make sense how it could be gone. Kyle hears some sounds towards the back of the building. He quickly moves to the back office. He peeks out the window into the dark clearing, barely illuminated by the south building lights. He sees the entity walk around the corner. It's dragging something loud against the building. Not a branch, but something metal. The way it's breathing is horrifying. Kyle at that moment realizes the window is still open. He's on the second floor, but he doesn't want to give that thing any options. He quietly moves to push the window shut. He can hear the entity just outside the window below. It's walking by, breathing grotesquely, saying unintelligible words to itself. Then, as Kyle shuts the window, a large metal object strikes the window, cracking it just as he shuts it, and the entity lets out a loud, horrific scream. Gut-wrenching Kyle and freezing him to the floor in a curled-up position. He quickly and silently moves to the front of the office to double-check if the door is locked. He makes sure the connecting office door is locked. He hears the entity run around the building, screeching and dragging its metal object. Kyle runs to the camera display system on the office computer. It had timed out, and he had to refresh the page. As it comes back on, he sees the entity rounding the corner to the front of the building. He briefly sees, as it passes under one of the building lights, its grotesque form. Long, tall body, but hunched over, with its spine seemingly poking out of its back. Loose skin on a long, skinny frame, but with gashes and chunks of flesh hanging. He could see, reflecting off the light, what looked like a long metal sign pole that was gnarled and jagged at its tip. It could easily kill Kyle with a weapon like that. Kyle is petrified. The building is cement and glass, but the glass was pretty thick, and the building was only accessible through the front doors, which were large metal security doors. The entity starts banging on the doors with the metal object, screaming into the night. It was now 1:30 a.m., and Kyle remembered the note that said security wouldn't be coming. Kyle was alone. He had a small flip phone, but it didn't get any service out here. His only option would be to get to the front of the building to see if he could contact authorities on the walkie-talkie system. But there was no way Kyle was going to the front where that thing was. It eventually walked off toward Kyle's car, dragging the metal weapon behind it. Kyle had parked as close as he could without driving on the company grass. It was dark over there. The entity walked over and crouched down behind Kyle's car. He was panicking. He was worried the entity might flatten his tires, forcing him to be stuck out here with it. He stared into the computer monitor, watching where that freak crouched behind his car. 15 minutes went by, and he couldn't quite make out if the entity was still behind the car. It was too dark, and the camera became pixelated, looking into the shadows. Kyle made his move. He ran at full sprint to the front security room and locked the door behind him. He got to the comm system and started talking into it for help.
I need help. I need help.
Kyle didn't really know what he was doing, so he started switching channels and calling for help.
I need help.
The radio hissed back at him as a man's voice came in on the other side. His voice barely faded in between static.
Help? Hey, there's something outside.
The man replied back through the static, barely intelligible.
Where are you?
In that moment, a loud lightning strike shot through the sky like a shotgun, almost giving Kyle a heart attack. The radio system went blank for 2 seconds and then kicked back onto default settings. Kyle couldn't remember what radio channel he had been on. He flipped through channels, asking for help again, when he saw on the old southwest-facing camera the entity walked into the light. It was standing at the tree line, just staring back toward him. Static came over the radio line. It sounded like someone was trying to connect to Kyle's radio. Unintelligible words and static started coming through. He heard his name on the radio in a gurgled, garbled sound. It must have been that entity, because he faintly heard that same grotesque breathing come across the radio static. He immediately shut the radio down and ran out of the room, taking the walkie-talkie with him just in case. He ran all the way to the back office upstairs and locked the door. It was the only room he felt safe in. He wouldn't be performing any of the duties left to do on the servers. He was going to curl up into a ball and wait until sunrise. As the night went on, Kyle could hear the entity outside lurking and banging on windows with the metal weapon. There was more thunder, but no rain. Kyle heard static on the walkie-talkie, but nothing intelligible. As Kyle was crying in a ball in the corner of the office, he heard a sound that made him swallow his heart. He heard the buzz to the front door. The light above the main entrance turned green if your key card was accepted, which unlocked the main large deadbolt. Then you used your key to unlock the smaller deadbolt before entering. But the light turned red if your key card failed to unlock the main door. After 4 failed attempts, the buzzer above made a sound. That was when security at the front desk would normally ask over the intercom who you were. He had only been shown that during his first interview in the daytime. His key card had always worked on the first try. That meant someone was attempting to get in. He quickly turned the computer monitor on in the office, not even wanting to look into the cameras in fear it would see him somehow. He booted into the camera system. Before he was fully logged in, he heard the front buzzer go off again due to incorrect key card attempts. Kyle was pale as a ghost as he checked the cameras at the front. There was nobody there. He saw the red light blink as the buzzer sounded again, but clearly nobody was standing there. He cycled through the cameras and saw it. The entity was standing at the same clearing on the southeast side of the forest, closest to the building. It was just standing there, looking right at the camera. The buzz was heard again as Kyle cut back to the front camera. Nobody was there. Kyle turned on the walkie-talkie to try to contact someone one last time. Static overtook his radio. Unintelligible words started coming back through. Kyle cut back to the southeast camera, and the entity was still standing there. He shut off his radio and turned off the computer. He curled into a ball and waited in the corner. He waited until 8:30 a.m., when the sun had fully risen for that time of year. By now, it was still partly cloudy, with the sun peeking through here and there. Kyle had all of his stuff gathered and was ready to make a break for his car. Just hoping his car was okay. Even though it was daytime, the forest tree line struck fear into him. As he was locking the front door, he saw scratches where that thing had been hitting the door with the metal object. He ran for his car, throwing his stuff in while looking toward the tree line. He did a quick 360 around his car, and all the tires looked fine. Not that that would have stopped him. He would have driven out of there with flat tires. He started it up and sped out of there, leaving a dust trail behind him. He looked to the rearview mirror one last time at that place, knowing he would never be coming back again. Kyle quit the job immediately, collecting his last check. In the 3 times he went there, he had made a total of $3,000, basically $1,000 per shift. He wondered why the company was out there and why the hell they would pay so much. Many years later, around 2010, Kyle was in the area with friends on a camping trip. They were heading to their campsite through the forest when Kyle felt a familiar fear while looking out the passenger window. He recognized the road, and it immediately gave him chills. It was the same road he used to take to get to the server building. Forest Road 86, but it was blocked off with a no trespassing sign. On the drive to the campsite, Kyle decided to tell his friends what happened to him those terrifying nights. The friends suggested they take the dirt bikes and go explore back in that area. Kyle was hesitant, but he felt a form of confidence with his friends being around. Later that day, Kyle and his friends drove from the campsite back down the trail to Forest Road 86. Kyle's heart was racing while driving past the no trespassing sign. When they got to the forest clearing, it was overgrown, but the most unsettling thing was, the building wasn't there. It was completely gone, and the lot where the building had stood had been filled in. You could tell something must have been there, which only added to the horror that Kyle felt. Their campsite was 8 miles north from there, and they were with a big group who had hunting rifles, so Kyle felt safe. He looked back one time while driving off on the dirt bikes and imagined seeing that entity standing in the distant trees. He gave himself chills as he rode off from the location, leaving Kyle with a deep wonder about what that company was actually doing out there, and what the hell that thing was. Was it still out lurking in those woods? Kyle was uneasy camping out there, but with his large friend group, he felt safe and vowed he would never go to that area alone ever again. In fact, he never wanted to see that forest clearing again.